Hello, and welcome to another NetAdmin video. Today we're going to talk about CloudPath on off-premise or cloud installation. When you purchase or you have registered for a trial of CloudPath, you're going to receive an email from CloudPath support that's going to give you your activation code. It's going to give you your administrator account name, which is going to be the email address that you submitted, and it's going to give you the link to click on to access your cloud installation or your cloud version of CloudPath. If you do not have, you have not purchased one and you'd like to actually get a trial of CloudPath to try it out for your business, here's the information that you'll need. Just send an email to the email address right there, provide the following information. And just a note that it is a 90-day trial and there is no expiration warning. So just be aware of that. Okay, so a few things that you need to know, some administrative notes here. So for your cloud deployment of CloudPath, so CloudPath will need to have publicly accessible access to your Active Directory servers. This is because CloudPath exists outside of your network and it has to begin the conversation requesting information from Active Directory. So your Active Directory server needs to be given an external IP address presence, and you can lock it down through your firewall where only CloudPath can get to it, but this is a must. So please be aware of that. Your wireless controller and or your access points, depending on who does your radius requests, will need access from the inside out to CloudPath. So CloudPath is not going to be coming in and trying to initiate communications with your controller and your access points, but they need access out to CloudPath. So depending on who you're, so like with Ruckus, I can either do AP initiated radius requests or I can do controller initiated radius requests. So that's from the inside out. But a lot of people, if you do access point initiated radius requests and you didn't give your access points the ability to talk to the internet, then you're going to have a problem. If you use a Cisco controller or an Aruba controller, all the access points tunnel back to the controller, so the controllers are your only place that can do the radius requests. So that will actually happen from the controller. So those controllers would need access to CloudPath from the inside out. If you are using some kind of external CA or external radius, then those devices would have to have have to be allowed access to CloudPath, and those are possibly, depending on where they exist and how you're using them, they may need to be publicly accessible to CloudPath as well. So these are just some very important caveats that you need to keep in mind when you're doing a cloud deployment of CloudPath. All right, so you're going to have to access CloudPath, and here's a list of your supported browsers. Just to note, the Internet Explorer is the full version of Internet Explorer, not Edge that comes with Windows 10. So just be aware of that caveat. All right, so we clicked on the link in the email, and now we have our activation screen where the activation code that was in our email comes up, and now we're going to actually click Activate. Now we're presented with the account email address that was in the email we received as well. And here we're going to create our password to do our login. All right, so from this point on, we are actually doing the initial setup of our CloudPath. So I'm just going to put in some information here. All right, so you have to fill in all of these fields. They are all required except for the department name. These can be the same, so if your support and your IT email is the same and you want to do it that way, this should be company domain, not email address. All right. All right, we're going to click next, and it's going to process this information. It's going to start configuring. This is part of the information that configures our certificate authority. All right. So now we have some workflow information. We have some default or some canned setups. So you can do one that gives you a BYOD slash SMS based guest setup. You can do one as a BYOD user only, or you can start blank. So since the BYOD user is encapsulated in here as well as a guest, I'm going to pick this one. Here's where you set up your secure SSID. So when you're doing Cloudpath, you're going to have two SSIDs usually. You're going to have an onboarding SSID and then the secure SSID that a user is moved to once they're onboarded. So Cloudpath test is the default one that it creates. So I'm just going to leave it as that, and then I'll show you where that is when we actually get into the workflow. All right, so here's our Active Directory information. All right, so if you'll notice the format that it asks for this in, so you have to put in the LDAP : //, and then it has to have an external IP address. So I mean, this cannot be a 192.168 or 172.16 or 10.10 like it exists on the inside of your network. It has to be a publicly accessible IP address. Something like this. Now this is made up, so it doesn't work. It's not mine. But I'm just trying to show you the format, and everybody needs to understand this has to be publicly accessible. All right, if you'll notice here, there are no spaces between this comma and this second DC. Very important. It will balk at that. So right here, it's actually, you can also set up LDAP if you need to, connection to an external radius server, connection to a SAML database, or you can use the onboard database. Okay, so after it goes through your Active Directory setup, it's going to go through and it publishes your enrollment portal. And now you have a system summary setup. So it tells you that everything you needed to do completed successfully. Here's information that you'll need to configure your radius server. If you notice, since this is a multi-tenant deployment in the cloud of Cloudpath, these are non-standard port numbers, so please be aware of that. Here's the shared secret key that you'll need to actually connect your radius to Cloudpath. I'm sorry, connect your controller to Cloudpath for radius. All right, so now we have our system set up. So now you can actually go into your configuration and go to your workflows. And so now we have the pre-built workflows that we asked for. So there's an acceptable use policy that you can go in here and modify. Here's the visitor or the guest. And this guest was an SMS based guest. So this guest is set up so a guest provides a telephone number, and then they are returned with a voucher code via text message to access the network. And as you notice here, it's saying they will move the user to Cloudpath Test, which was the secure network that we created. Same thing for our employees, and this is a BYOD setup. It's prompting me for my Active Directory credentials going to the Active Directory that we set up during the initial install. And after it's done, it's going to move me to Cloudpath Test. So these are just some basic things. We're not actually going through how to configure a workflow and all that stuff. Those are other videos that I'd recommend you go and check out if you will need to set this up. So under your configuration is also your Radius server information. So if you need to go back and get that information, it's there. You can click on this hourglass right here and it'll show your shared secret. Over here to the left is also your authentication servers. This is the Active Directory server that we set up. If you need to have multiple Active Directory servers, you can do that, or an LDAP or a SAML database. You can have multiple authentication server types, and those are referenced back over here on the Workflows tab, where I prompt my user for my credentials. Here's where I actually choose which authentication method that it goes back to. So this is fundamentally your setup here. So one other thing that I would like to say, if over here on Radius servers, and this is more for troubleshooting, but down here at the bottom, you can actually view your Radius server logs. So if you'll actually, when you configure your controller for your Radius setup, most controllers have the ability to test its connection to Radius. So when you test your configuration in there, you should see that test message show up in your Radius logs. If you're not seeing that test message show up in your Radius logs, then you probably have some kind of a configuration error, or you're blocking something at the firewall. So a couple things you just need to keep in mind as you're getting this set up, so you can actually do a little troubleshooting to make sure that everything is functioning properly, so you can have a successful deployment of Cloudpath. All right, I hope this video has been informative, and thank you very much.